Packard. Imagine a car company so ahead of its time that it gave the world air conditioning before most Americans had reliable electricity at home, and yet still managed to vanish from history like it never existed. That company was Packard, once the ultimate symbol of American wealth. Their slogan said it all: ask the man who owns one. Translation: if you have to ask what it is, you probably can't afford it. In the 1920s and 30s, Packard owners weren't just rich, they were rich. If someone rolled up in a Packard, you didn't wonder what they did for a living. You wondered how many skyscrapers had their name on them. Their straight-8 engines were buttery smooth. Their interiors felt like sitting inside a private cigar lounge. And the ride? Imagine floating on a cloud that was floating on another cloud. And in the race for innovation, Packard was Usain Bolt. They introduced the world's first production V12 in 1915, the legendary Twin 6. Then in 1940, they casually dropped factory air conditioning, decades before most homes had AC. It was the kind of flex that should have kept Packard on the throne forever. So how do you go from unbeatable to non-existent? Well, Packard made one fatal decision. They merged with Studebaker. Yes, Studebaker, a company whose finances were so messy that even they didn't realize how broke they were. Studebaker strutted into the room in 1953 like, relax, we're healthy, profitable, and totally stable. Reality, Packard didn't merge with a partner. They merged with a ticking financial bomb. Studebaker had outdated factories, slow production lines, rising labor costs, constant strikes, and accounting so messy it could qualify as abstract art. And while Packard was dragging Studebaker's dead weight, Detroit moved on. The 1950s were the era of the modern OHV-V8. Cadillac had one, Oldsmobile had one, even tiny bankrupt companies had one. Packard, still using a straight 8 from the Great Depression, insisting it was perfectly fine. They finally launched a V8 in 1955, 5 years late, and everyone else was already on their second generation. Meanwhile, Cadillac was going full supernova, flashy tail fins, new models every year, bold chrome everywhere, marketing so strong it could sell snow in a blizzard. Cadillac didn't just compete, they dominated the luxury world. Packard, being the smaller company, simply couldn't keep up. They had ambitious redesigns planned for 55 and 56, but Studebaker's financial drain left them too broke to finish the job. By the late 50s, Packard was out of money, out of time, and out of miracles. And in 1958, the Studebaker-Packard Corporation quietly pulled the plug, ending the life of a brand that once defined American luxury, Cadillac. Have you ever seen an old Cadillac rolling by and thought, man, America really used to try to compete with the Germans? Imagine being so dominant that your brand literally calls itself the standard of the world. And nobody argued. Owning one basically meant you'd made it. Job steady, house mortgage paid, hairline intact. But Cadillac didn't stumble into greatness. It engineered it. The brand had already set benchmarks early on with innovations like the electric starter, but the real explosion came after the war, no pun intended. The 1948 to 1960 tail fin era turned Cadillac into a cultural weapon. The 1959 Cadillac Eldorado, with those space-age fins, became one of the most recognizable silhouettes in automotive history. Seriously, you could spot one at night based on the taillights alone, and America went wild for them. Models like the Series 62, DeVille, and Fleetwood were everywhere, and in 1966 alone, over 190,000 Cadillacs were sold, 140,000 of them DeVilles. And by the late 70s, Cadillac was consistently moving over 300,000 cars a year, making it one of the top luxury brands in the US. No BMW, no Mercedes, no Audi, just Cadillac, sitting on the throne, sipping chrome-flavored confidence. But then something terrible happened. Any guesses? Yep, GM happened. Unfortunately, GM executives saw the money flowing and realized, wait, what if we make more money by spending less money? And what was their brilliant solution? A play called badge engineering. Instead of building unique Cadillacs, GM started copying and pasting platforms across the company. Suddenly, your luxury sedan had suspiciously similar bones to a Chevy. And then came the Cimarron, the compact Cadillac that was basically a Chevy Cavalier wearing a tux from a thrift store. Even Cadillac engineers gagged when they saw it, and just when it couldn't get worse, the late 70s oil crisis hit. Cadillac was still building 19-foot rolling sofas that drank fuel faster than a frat boy. Americans were starting to care about fuel economy, handling, and cars that actually fit in a garage. Meanwhile, German competitors were quietly perfecting engines that did all of that, and Cadillac looked a little prehistoric. The company tried to adapt. They experimented with complicated V864 engines, a diesel V8, and smaller front-wheel drive models. But none of them really worked, and buyers weren't impressed. By the 1990s, Cadillac wasn't the standard of the world. It was the standard of mocking questions like, hey dude, did you borrow this ride from your grandpa? Today, Cadillac has lost its identity and prestige so badly that BMW, Mercedes, and Audi don't even consider it a rival anymore. Jaguar. What happens when a legendary luxury car brand basically disappears overnight? No, this is not a hypothetical question. This actually happened. Imagine being Jaguar and waking up one morning realizing you sold 49 cars in all of Europe. Not 490,000 units, not 490, just 49. So how did Jaguar get to this point? The thing is, Jaguar wasn't always the 49 cars a month meme it is today. It started in 1922 building motorcycle sidecars, eventually morphing into Jaguar and unleashing cars so beautiful that Enzo Ferrari called the E-Type the most beautiful car ever made. Jaguar lived by founder Sir William Lyon's rule: copy nothing. And to its credit, Jaguar didn't. They made cars nobody else could pull off. If you drove an E-Type, you weren't rich. You were cool. The Beatles bought Jaguars. Movie stars bought Jaguars. CEO types bought Jaguars. It was Britain's automotive pride. Classy, stylish, fast, and just a bit dangerous. But then the 70s happened, and Jaguar got sucked into the Bermuda Triangle of automotive incompetence. British Leyland, a massive company that brought together many iconic brands like Austin, Morris, Jaguar, Rover, and Land Rover. Quality tanked. Designs stagnated. Reliability became something Jaguar buyers just whispered about at dinner parties. Younger buyers simply weren't interested anymore. Jaguar was aging, and not in the fine wine way, more like milk. The 80s brought hope when Jaguar broke free and briefly went independent again, only to end up in Ford's shopping cart in 1989. And instead of saving Jaguar, Ford created a business school case study of how not to run a luxury brand. Their biggest blunder? The X-Type, a baby Jaguar meant to compete with the BMW 3 Series. Instead of giving it proper Jaguar DNA, Ford built it on a Ford Mondeo platform, and it showed. It drove like a Mondeo, felt like a Mondeo, and critics basically called it Mondeo wearing cosplay. Loyal Jaguar fans hated it. BMW buyers weren't fooled. The entire brand reputation got diluted. It was the automotive version of catfishing. By the mid-2000s, Jaguar was deep in trouble. Sales were weak, profits were worse, and Ford ended up losing billions trying to modernize it. And in 2008, with no patience left, Ford sold Jaguar and Land Rover to Tata Motors for just $2.3 billion. Everyone joked about an Indian company buying two of Britain's most iconic brands, until Tata proved everybody wrong. Jaguar's styling got modern. They finally made SUVs, the F-Pace, E-Pace, I-Pace, and sales exploded. Globally, Jaguar hit 180,000 units in 2018, its highest volume ever. For a moment, Jaguar wasn't just alive, it was hunting again, but that glow-up faded fast. Jaguar's lineup aged quickly. Jaguar bet hard on diesel right before diesel became socially illegal. The I-Pace launched and immediately got cooked alive by Tesla. Meanwhile, almost all of Jaguar's actual profit came from Land Rover, which meant Jaguar wasn't a luxury brand, it was a financially dependent roommate. So Jaguar decided to do something bold, or insane, depends on how you ask. In 2021, Jaguar's CEO Thierry Bolloré walked on stage and basically said, "Alright, we're nuking everything." The plan, called Reimagine, wasn't a redesign. It was a full reset. Shut down every model, stop production, and return in 2025 as a Bentley-level ultra-luxury EV brand with cars starting around $200,000. It was bold. It was risky. It was either genius or career-ending. Turns out it might have been the second one, because Bolloré suddenly resigned in 2022 for personal reasons. Translation: even he didn't want to stick around to see how this went. Then things got weird. In late 2024, Jaguar unveiled a brand new logo, retiring the leaping cat, and launched an ad campaign that looked less like a luxury EV reboot and more like a perfume commercial filmed inside a TikTok filter. Fans hated it. Purists called it soulless. Others called it corporate astrology. Twitter roasted it into ash. But despite the chaos, Jaguar insists everything is fine. They call this a strategic pause, a master plan, a chrysalis moment. According to Jaguar, the first model of their grand rebirth arrives in 2026, fully electric, ultra premium, and ready to shock the world. Maybe they'll pull it off. Maybe Jaguar will rise again and become the British Tesla. Or maybe, after 100 years of prestige, Jaguar is quietly transforming into the automotive equivalent of a LinkedIn influencer, trying desperately to stay relevant, but making everyone cringe instead. Buick. Pop quiz. Which American luxury car maker is basically invisible in its homeland, but treated like automotive royalty halfway around the world? If you said Buick, give yourself a gold star and a pat on the back. In China, Buick isn't just popular, it's a full-blown celebrity. Red carpet, paparazzi, the whole 9 yards. They've got over a dozen models over there, and Chinese buyers line up for them, like they're camping out overnight for the newest iPhone. Meanwhile, back in the States, Buick's got 4 models, and the average American's reaction is, wait, they still make those? So what the hell happened to America's sweetheart? Back in 1909, 1903, the company was founded by David Dunbar Buick, a guy who knew his way around a combustion engine. It eventually became one of General Motors' crown jewels. It quietly proved that owning a luxury car doesn't have to be expensive. That's why the mid-20th century Buick was the Goldilocks of automobiles, luxurious enough to turn heads at the country club, but affordable enough that families didn't go bankrupt buying it. And boy did Buick have hits. The Electra, Wildcat, Riviera, cars that dripped chrome, packed V8 thunder under the hood, and had interiors that felt like your rich uncle's study. Then there was the Regal Grand National, Buick's turbocharged middle finger to anyone who thought the brand was boring. This blacked-out beast made Mustang drivers feel a bit grumpy. It proved Buick could build something genuinely dangerous without slapping a Cadillac badge on it and calling it a day. But then came the fall. Buick didn't fade out of American relevance in some dramatic wheels-falling-off explosion. No, it sort of drifted away, like a car that missed its exit but is too embarrassed to admit it, so it just keeps driving until the road ends. The brand got stuck in this awkward middle zone, not fun enough to hang with BMW, not cheap enough to hang with Toyota, and definitely not exciting enough to make anyone under 62 say, yeah, that's the one. And while Americans were squinting at Buick like, wait, do they still make these? China was losing its mind over them. Seriously. Buick is massive there. It's like America handed Buick divorce papers, and Buick immediately rebounded with someone richer, nicer, and way more interested. Saab. Before you guys grab your pitchforks and start yelling, Saab was never a luxury brand. Take a chill pill. The only reason Saab eventually got shoved into the luxury lane was as Americans tried forcing it there, like shoving a cat into a bathtub. It just wasn't meant for that life, and the end result was, well, a crime against common sense. But honestly, Saab's story was chaotic long before Americans got involved. In 1937, Saab was founded to develop and manufacture combat aircraft. The Swedish Air Force was then built up during the Cold War with Saab fighter jets and became one of the world's largest air forces. And by 1945, World War II was over. Sweden didn't need new fighter jets, and Saab suddenly had a big building full of engineers and zero things to engineer. So they pivoted to building cars, except none of them had ever built a car before. In fact, only 2 engineers even had a driver's license. Imagine 16 aircraft nerds designing a vehicle after studying like pictures of Volkswagens. Yet somehow the Saab 92 was born, a car that looked like someone chopped the wings off a fighter plane and said, ship it. It had 18 horsepower. 18. That's less power than a modern lawnmower. But the aerodynamics? Crazy. The drag coefficient of just 0.30 was Ferrari tier. And the remarkable part? People loved it. Sweden went nuts. Saab started exporting to America. Rally drivers discovered they handled like UFOs, and suddenly Saab wasn't the guys who used to build warplanes. They were the weird geniuses making oddly fast jelly beans. Saab took off fast, no airplane pun intended, and by the 50s and 60s they were crushing rally stages and building a cult fan base. The 93, the 95 wagon, the 96 rally monster, the Sonnet sports car, Saab was building momentum like a snowball rolling downhill. Then came the 99 Turbo and the original 900, and that's when Saab truly became Saab. Turbo joyrides, night panels, quirky ignition placement, aircraft DNA everywhere, safety obsession, and shapes that made zero sense but felt so right. But the good times didn't last. Saab could have kept soaring. Unfortunately, they made one of the worst deals in automotive history. In 1990, General Motors bought 50% of Saab. The idea was GM gets cool engineering, Saab gets money. Instead, GM gave Saab platform sharing, cost cutting, and can you just be more normal energy. Saab lost its weirdness, the thing that made people love it. The cars became diluted, fans got angry. Sales dipped to the point that GM decided to buy the entire company in 2000. Maybe that was GM's plan all along. By 2008, GM collapsed without warning, dragging Saab down with it like a sinking ship. In 2010, Spyker Cars bought Saab from GM and genuinely tried to bring the brand back to life. But the damage was too deep. Saab finally went bankrupt in 2011, and the once legendary name drifted quietly into history. Lincoln. What if we tell you Lincoln is the only luxury brand in the world that has died, come back, died again, got CPR from Ford, tripped over its shoelaces, got up, died again, and somehow still showed up to work like nothing happened? In 1917, Henry M. Leland founded the Lincoln Motor Company, and he named it after Abraham Lincoln, and they were making V-12 aircraft engines for World War I. Then the war ended and Lincoln started building cars. Their first attempt, the Model L, was basically a luxury brick, too expensive to build, too expensive to buy, and somehow already outdated on arrival. By 1921, Lincoln was broke. Bankruptcy sale broke. And when they put the company up for auction, exactly one bidder showed up, Henry Ford. Henry bought it, handed the keys to his son Edsel, and Edsel went ballistic. He sliced $1,000 off the production cost of every car, then hit Lincoln with a whole personality change process. This man single-handedly dragged Lincoln from bankruptcy to baller status. Then Edsel pulled the most I'm rich move ever. He built a one-off vacation car. His friends loved it so much Lincoln decided to mass produce it in 1940. We're talking about the Continental, a legend, a luxury icon, a nameplate so famous even presidents rode in it. But Lincoln being Lincoln, the good days didn't last. Fast forward 20 years and the brand was gasping for air again. The Continental nameplate was gone between 1949 and 1955, and the lineup went into a full identity crisis. Then came 1958, the year every Lincoln executive probably tried to forget. Those models were gigantic, overstyled, and built with the structural integrity of a folding chair. We're talking recalls, squeaks, rattles, electrical nightmares, engine issues. The cars looked expensive but sounded like a toolbox rolling down a hill. Sales tanked. Dealers panicked. Lincoln was back in the ICU, hooked up to financial life support. Nothing the brand tried was working. It was like Lincoln had forgotten how to be Lincoln. This time, Robert McNamara stepped in. Yes, the former United States Secretary of War who had previously helped Ford from the financial crisis. He ended Lincoln's failed attempt at creating a standalone Continental brand, merged things back together, and told Lincoln to build the next Continental on a stretched Thunderbird platform. Engineers pleaded, "This is stupid." He cold-heartedly replied, "Do it or quit." And somehow, the engineers figured it out. The 61 Continental, with its tighter dimensions, 9-year production cycle, and iconic suicide doors, became one of the most recognizable cars in American history. Sales doubled. It became the presidential vehicle. Lincoln was back again. Fast forward to the 90s and 2000s, and Ford was off buying European luxury brands like it was building a Pokemon collection. Lincoln was supposed to be part of this premier automotive group, but instead got bounced around, ignored, badge engineered into weird pickups, and generally treated like the forgotten middle child. Cadillac moved on. The Germans sprinted ahead. Meanwhile, poor old Lincoln sat there waiting for Ford to remember it existed. And yet, somehow, Lincoln still refuses to die. While Americans moved on to German sedans and giant trucks, China fell in love. Overseas, Lincoln became a status symbol again. Buyers lined up, sales surged. In a way, China didn't just support Lincoln, it practically adopted the brand. If Lincoln has proven anything over the last century, it's this. You can fall apart, get replaced, and even be forgotten, but as long as someone out there still believes in you, you can always make a comeback. We hope you enjoyed this video. Here's another one you'll love. As always, thanks for watching.